This video will show how to import an Excel file through the generic data file import in ShipWeight. There are many ways of importing data and files into ShipWeight, but this will show one of them, namely the data file import. So I have here an empty project, and I have an Excel file with some data that I want to import into here. So I go to my project menu, I select import and select data file. Now this pops up a import assistant, and the first thing that I want to do here is to browse to find the file that I want to import. So I do this by clicking the browse button, and then in this case selecting this ShipWeight import Excel file, and then it opens up a preview of all the sheets that are existing in this Excel file. And there are two sheets. There are the Lightship and loads. So here's a preview of the loads items, and this is the preview of the Lightship items. And I want to import the Lightship items, and there's about 4,500 of them. So when I select the Lightship here and then click the select button, I'm telling ShipWeight that this is the sheet in the file I selected that I want to import. The next thing that happens is that ShipWeight tries to map columns in the Excel file, map them to the fields that we have in ShipWeight. And if it succeeds by that, it will mark the columns green. And what it does basically is that it looks at the header row in the Excel spreadsheet, and if that header row has a header that has the same name as a field in ShipWeight, it assumes that there is a mapping. So here, for instance, it has already mapped factor in spreadsheet against factor in ShipWeight, unit weight, VCG, LCG, TCG, and the min max of LCG. So then we are left with some other white columns that have not been mapped, and we want to map these. For example, the ShipWeight column here in the spreadsheet, I want to map that towards the weight group column in ShipWeight. So then I select ShipWeight, and this turns pink, and I can select it either here in the column in the preview, or I can click it down in this list of Excel sheet headers. Then I move to this ShipWeight field item property, and I select weight group, and that's it. Now I've done my first mapping here. So the ShipWeight column in the spreadsheet is mapped towards the weight group column in ShipWeight. And this means that we don't have to have a specific order of columns in the spreadsheet to import it, because we can just do this mapping here afterwards. Now let's map the rest of them. So items here goes to item number, description goes to, or des goes to description, and then number goes to number of, and then this here called random, I don't want to import it, so then I simply leave it white. This is basically if I now have my other settings correct, I can just click import and select whether I want to import to the main database or to the playground. But I will show you some of the options, not all options, but some of the most basic options that you might want to look at before you actually carry out the import. So to do that, we go to the top of the dialog again and select this import sheet, and now we can see basically the same thing as we saw in the first assistant sheet. We can see the complete path to the file that we want to import. We see the file type. So this shows you that we can also actually, now we're importing an Excel file, but we can import from Access by just referring to the table, or we can import text files with no delimiters, with tab delimiters, custom delimiters, and so forth. the list that you see here represents the mapping that we did in the previous view. So this is just another way of showing that mapping, showing that the weight group in ShipWeight goes towards the SWIBIS group in the Excel sheet. Now, if we want to, we can save this mapping by clicking on the Save button here, and then we can type in, for example, SWIBIS Excel import, and now we're saving only the setup of this. So the next time we want to import a similar spreadsheet, we don't have to go in and map again. We can just go and say we want to open a previously saved mapping, select that mapping, open it up, and then it gets us our mapping. So in this video we'll look at some options, and if I go to this options tab sheet here, we can find ways of how to treat, for example, duplicate items. And duplicate items means that we are trying to import an item that already exists in the database, and an identical item is defined by the same combination of weight group and item number. So if you select keep old and you're trying to import an item that already exists, it's going to keep the existing item, and it's going to throw you an error message that it's found a duplicate item. If you click update only given fields, it will update existing items, but only with the fields that you are currently importing. If you select update given fields and blank the rest, it will update the item it finds that's already existing. It will update it with the items that you are importing, and any other values in other columns will be set to null. The next thing here is if we want to log the imported items, if we want to trim spaces in front of and after the value itself, because that can sometimes cause problems if there are unwanted spaces in the spreadsheet. And finally, we have this unit selection here. So the spreadsheet that we are importing, is it SI units or is it US units? And remember that this is not necessarily the same units as we are using in our current spreadsheet, because these are talking about the units that are in the Excel spreadsheet, not the units that we're using in ShipWeight. And so if we have a spreadsheet with US units, like in this case, we select US units here, and then ShipWeight will convert it to the correct units that we use in ShipWeight. Now, the only thing that you really need to import some items is the weight group and the item number. And the item number is what, together with the weight group, that uniquely identifies as an item. So that must exist. If you don't have an item number in your spreadsheet, you can create it on the fly during the import by selecting this function to set an function for automatically create item numbers, and then you can say, okay, I'm going to start on with item number 1000, and the next I will do in steps of 10, for example. But here we do have the item number, and I do recommend that if as far as possible to use item numbers that's not automatically generated, but that comes from a GUID or something similar. That is usually more robust. Now, when the settings are done here, we can either go to import or we can test it. If we want to test the import first, we go to this new sheet here, log and test. And first thing we can do is to select test SWI to see if there are any errors detected in the import definition file, and right now there's no errors. Typical error that you would get would be if you're missing an item number field and you have not enabled an automatic generation of item number. This is the place where you would get that information. And then we can also click this check import to perform the import without actually importing it. Now it runs through the import, and you can see the progress bar down here, and then it will tell you a small report that the test import completed, and it's now showing you the results in pounds and feet, because we had the US units in the spreadsheet. So it's going to import 2,370,000 and something pounds with the feet VCG of 15.66, 110 feet LCG, and 0.44 TCG. Okay, so now let's finally do the actual import, and this is the progress bar down here for the import, and now I'm just going to click import, and then it should start to import, and it's now importing at a speed of about 1000 items per second, which is a typical speed if you have a relatively okay network. And then it tells me import complete, 4610 items imported to ShipWeight database. All of them were inserted, no one were updated, so no one existed before. I'm clicking OK, and now as I close this dialog, I'm reminded that I need to summarize the weight group in the weight group menu to update calculated codes and so forth. So I do this summary by going to weight groups and summarize weight group here, or on the toolbar this sigma sign is the same, and clicking that will now summarize in the main window the items that I imported. And I imported US units Excel spreadsheet, but I imported it into a metric project in ShipWeight, so now I have my tons and my meters for VCG, LCG, and TCG. So that is how to import from the data file dialog, and there are many other ways of importing in ShipWeight, but that will be in later sessions.